Hi everyone, it's Leandra at the new Vocations Racehorse Adoption Program's Kentucky facility. And here with me today is my own personal horse who I adopted from New Vocations. His name is Honest Money, who I affectionately call Moo. And I'm here today to show you how we deal with both physical and the mental boundaries that are critical to establish yourself as a leader in your relationship with your horse, which is going to help you not only on the ground, but also it's going to help set you up for the framework you need under saddle. And my horse is really good at demonstrating that even we have to deal with reinforcing these behaviors on a routine basis, even with our own horses. It's a work in progress, always. But he is also very young. He's just 3 years old. So he does like to test boundaries. And that's important in understanding how horses interact with each other. I'm sure if you have watched horses, whether it be videos of horses in the wild or you're watching horses interact in turnout in a more domestic setting, like at a barn, horses, they establish a hierarchy. And while we talk about it being linear, it's not a set boundary. So when there are new horses introduced, or when a horse sees an opportunity to become higher ranked in a hierarchy, if they have that sort of mental disposition where they will challenge, then they do. That we see especially in young horses. We see it a lot in geldings being a little more physical in it. So it will change how they test each other, but it is something to their place in that hierarchy. And so when you're thinking about how we interact with our horses and wanting to be in a role where we are the leader, and especially where we're coming from a position where we're obviously not as physically large as them or physically capable, that we have to be able to set boundaries. So one of the things that Moo does that will sometimes drive me crazy, so we work on, is he will try to drag me around. You can see I have a chain over his nose, which gives me a little bit of a physical advantage so that he will feel any pressure that I apply a little bit more. It allows me to be more precise with my ask. I don't necessarily want to just be stronger. I want to be more clear, because a great thing to keep in mind when you're working with your horse is that they understand the contrast, and you can think about it as making the right thing easy and the wrong thing hard. So if I want to, for example, he's trying to reach for the grass. He's a little impatient because of the flies right now. So obviously it's harder for him. He feels the pressure when he's pulling against me. If I establish that, if it's harder for him to do that, then he will be less likely to continue. And he will, because that's part of his disposition. But make the right thing easy and the wrong thing hard. And generally that's going to get you where you want to go. So like I said, one of the things that he does is tries to pull away if he's interested in grazing, and maybe we're just cooling out after a ride, but he'll try to just go wherever he wants and kind of ignore what I'm doing. So I'm going to allow him to graze. We'll kind of watch what he does for a second, but I don't want to be dragged all over the place. So I'm going to kind of set my physical boundary. And I have the lead rope, obviously, and I'll allow him to graze within proximity to me, but I'm not going to let him just drag me where I want to go. And we'll see what he does, but generally what happens is that he will test that boundary. And I will, if he tries to walk away outside of whatever, whether it's out here, we're being really casual and I trust him a lot. You have to watch, obviously, for them putting a leg over their lead rope and turning into a dangerous situation. But say I want to set it just right here, generally what would happen, and obviously it depends on, like we've done this quite a few times at this point, but maybe you have a new horse, maybe you're just working on this with a horse you've had for a while who just doesn't have that structure. But generally you'll feel them sort of push that boundary because they just don't have it established. And I would give him pressure on the lead rope, and you see he responded to it, but even if he didn't, I would be consistent I would apply pressure and release. The release gives them an opportunity to respond to it rather than instinctually brace against pressure. And then you can just see, for example, just to give yourself a baseline, how many times you have that consistent ask. Don't change your ask. You know, if you're trying to learn a language, you don't change the answer because you're not getting it. You just have to be consistent. So squeeze, release, and you can count in your head, see how long it takes to get a response. And you're not looking for perfection, you're just looking for any response. So any release of pressure, turning their, even so you can see the corner of their eye. And so maybe it takes 5 times to get a response. That's okay. Just keep that as a mental baseline and you know where you can improve. Now they might then go to test you again. Be consistent, do the same thing, squeeze, release, he turned to be towards me. That's a great response, so he's learning. And now if I want to walk somewhere, he pays more attention to me, where my body is, where I'm asking him to be, rather than him trying to lead me wherever he wants to go. I've established myself as a leader because I'm setting a physical and in that way a mental boundary, because horses use movements to establish themselves in a herd. So circling back to what we were talking about, that hierarchy, you will see when you observe in those videos that the dominant horses will move other horses, the more submissive ones, out of a space. And in controlling movement, they are establishing themselves as a leader. So practice even in those day-to-day things like cooling your horse out. So I'm walking with my horse right now and allowing him, I'm trying to also make it so that you guys have a visual, but say I want to set in the middle of a circle and just only allow him to have this space, that's okay. So play with your horse, see how they react, create a baseline for yourself so you can track progress. Don't expect perfection right away. We're just looking for small improvements that we can build on. But this is a really good way to check in with your horse, make sure that you're still in a leadership position, and you will have a tool to establish yourself, give yourself the confidence you need, and I assure you, you're going to be able to see it in other activities, whether it's riding or just leading them in general. If you can build on basic exercises like this to establish yourself, back up, as a leader with your horse. Thank you so much for listening today for our Trainer Tip Tuesday on establishing boundaries.